Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Blabbit. It's great to see everybody here. If you're returning, you know what we do here at Blabbit. We talk to experts in their fields, and they're nice enough to share tips and insights with us. If you're watching for the first time, well, my name is Paul Geiger. I am a New York City public speaking coach and interview expert. And I work with individuals about making sure their message is really clear and very impactful, and that they are utilizing listening behaviors and also speaking directly to the people they need to speak to. Glenn?
Thanks, Paul. Hey, everyone. My name is Glenn Ingram. I've been working for the better part of the last 2 decades, teaching, coaching, and training people in sales. And it's not as bad as it sounds. I know sale is a 4-letter word. But what we do is try to help people understand that listening is just as important as talking, because if you don't know how to influence and what somebody wants, it's hard to deliver a consultative and be an expert advisor. Bob, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks, Glenn. Thanks, Paul. It's great to be here. Really honored. I'm going to just tell you, I'm not going to talk about my personal history much. I'm going to talk about the history Tom and I have together. And Tom and I have been working together since the pandemic started. And we've only been in the same room since the pandemic, I believe 3 or 4 times, right, Tom?
Yes.
So we've literally engaged with each other every day of the week for the last however many months, trying to figure out ways to help people be more successful through the pandemic. And Tom, why don't you explain to us a little bit how that came about? Because I think it's a great story.
Sure. I think, thanks, Bob. And again, thanks, Paul and Glenn, for having us on the show today. It's great to be here. Bob and I have known each other for about 10 years, and we kind of connected through networking circles. And many times discussions around how networking is really struggling because, as you shared, Glenn, people don't do a lot of listening. They do a lot of talking. And, so we would go off in the corner and have our conversations about what was happening. And then we started reaching out to one another when we were hitting challenges. And we grab coffee or breakfast, and those coffees or breakfasts would turn into 2 or 3 hour discussions about how to help the other person take the next step forward. And we just found that as entrepreneurs, there aren't a lot of peers that we can talk to, people who we can have those conversations about, whether we're trying a new product or a new idea, or when we're struggling. And so we would get together and make that happen. And I think, as Bob said, as the pandemic hit, we knew that there were a lot of people, especially small business owners and entrepreneurs and leaders of organizations, who were going to have those challenges and had no one to turn to. And so we created the Renegade Success Network to help those people find solutions, next steps, and maybe most importantly, a community of support. So when they were either looking to celebrate and had no one to celebrate with, our group was there, or they had a challenge that they were trying to overcome, and so that we can help them. And so it has really developed into a great organization that I'm not sure, even when we started it, we thought it was going to turn into this. I think it was more like, how are we going to keep ourselves sane as the pandemic was hitting?
Well, first of all, upon hearing that you guys have spent just about every day since the pandemic started together, and I know you do a daily podcast, I have to apologize for making you talk to each other yet again here today. So, but we really do appreciate it. But one of the interesting things that I've been hearing from people who do always ask about our various episodes, our weekly episodes here on Blabbit, is they're curious about Renegade Success Network. Why isn't it just Success Network? Why Renegade? And I wasn't as clear about that as I'm sure the two of you can be, because you know where it came from and you have a clear idea of where it could be going.
Sure, I'll start, and then Bob, you can feel
Please.
free to jump in if you have any thoughts. I think we were searching for, who we felt like we were. And I think one of the things about Renegades that's stuck with us was a couple of things. One, we wanted to be unique, not different, not against someone, like we thought about rebels, and that seems like it's going against something. And really what we were thinking about was we wanted to be people who created their own unique pathway to success, because we are all different and we all have unique knowledge, experience, and perspective that allows us to move forward. And so our thought was, as a renegade, you're someone who is making your own pathway. You're making your own decisions based on where you have been and where you want to go. And so Renegade just seemed to really fit. And we sort of stuck with it. And then as we started to move forward, we think about, all right, well, what are those people who are renegades looking for? They're looking for success. And they're also looking for a network, a community to be a part of, because we both know that when we were in communities, we found significant growth and support that made all the difference that allowed us to move forward. Bob, anything you want to add to that?
I was thinking about it earlier today when I was running, that we all have been renegades in our lives at one time or another. By our definition, if you're carving your own pathway to whatever you're trying to achieve, then you're a renegade. And what has been so enlightening to me is how many people have joined our network, gone to our Facebook group, and read a book that I wrote called The Renegade Way. There, I got my plug in, Tom. I knew I could do it. It's an inside joke. But when they look at those things, they start to go, you know what? I didn't realize it, but I am a renegade. And I would argue here that every single person watching or listening to this is a renegade in one way or another. The way you raise your children, the way you go to work, what you do as a leader on a team, how you're doing something entrepreneurial, selling your house for a huge profit when everyone told you not to do that. Whatever it is, that's what happened. That's being a renegade by our definition. And so we tried to give it language so that people can feel comfortable with it, because sometimes people don't support us when we're renegades. They don't understand. They don't have the passion. And so we're trying to give a community and a sensibility that it's okay to be who you want to be. And once it starts, we're seeing people have huge successes because they're embracing, as we say, embracing the renegade in each of them. Mm-hmm. And that language came to us from a lot of personal experience. And I had no idea, and I'm sure Tom didn't, that when we came up with the word renegade in late April of 2020, that we would be talking about it in October 2021. No. And build it. It's one of the most exciting and enlightening things to me, in the sense that sometimes things just fall in your lap and they make sense in a way that if we had planned something, we wouldn't have gotten here.
Mm-hmm. Well, that sounds amazing. I like the renegade because, you know what, I've always enjoyed not being normal and have never wanted to be normal. But back to what Tom was talking about initially, I have a question for you. When we talk about networking, and I have these conversations with people that are maybe thinking about getting into networking groups and things like that, I had someone make the comment to me a long time ago that, you know what, there's only a very finite difference between networking and not working. And a lot of our networking turns into not working. When people are trying to find places to network, the advice I've given them a lot is look for business owners. Nothing wrong with salespeople, but in the networking groups that I've gotten a lot more out of is when I can talk business owner to business owner, and we can have more in common and we can promote things, as opposed to salespeople that typically are promoting their product maybe a little bit more than yours. With networking, and I'm interested to learn more about the Renegade Success Network and how you're doing that. What advice do you give to businesses, entrepreneurs, whatever, that are looking to network to make it be where they can give and get as well?
I'll take may I?
Yeah, Bob.
Tom and I are firm believers in the idea of giving. You give first and then you receive. And we both read the book, The Go-Giver by Bob Berg. And I know it made a huge impression on Tom. And I think you're the one who turned me onto it. And I read it and it was like, this is amazing. And the idea is not to give away all your services if you haven't read the book. It's not to give it all away, but it's to provide value and to be of service first and foremost. So Tom and I, we often will go to networking events before the pandemic and talk to people and be like, so what's going on? What's your biggest challenge here is a question I ask all the time. I'm just trying to figure out. If they say, well, my biggest challenge is I need to find a printer for business cards and I need them tomorrow. Hey, I got a guy for you. And it's often not related to what I do for a living, But providing them that value and giving them a great referral, or saying, wow, that really sucks. Man, I'll keep you in my thoughts. Can I check in with you? Really builds the know, like, and trust that Bob Berg talks about. You got to be known, you got to be liked, you got to be trusted, or no one's going to do business with you. So if you go to a network event and I say, I am Bob from the Renegade Success Network, and we're going to help you be a millionaire in 3 weeks, no one's paying attention and no one's walking up to me afterwards. And I would say, Tom might disagree, but I'm not a real big fan of networking events anymore. I find that what you said, Glenn, is very, very true. It's people who are checking the box. Honey, I can't be at dinner tonight. I've got a networking event. Whoa, that's big. And it's not, and they count business cards. Oh, I gave out 87 cards. Okay, great. I go to networking events. If I go now, 3 cards. You've got to earn a card. I don't give them away. If I have 1,000 business cards, they're going to last a long, long time. What do you say to all that, Tom?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the other thing that I've learned is that you can network with anyone if you really are doing it in the way Bob talked about as giving value, and that you are not just telling people what you do, but you're having conversations with them about where are they at and where are they trying to get to, and where in that can you help them go from wherever they are to where they want to be. And what I've found is that some of the best networking I've done throughout my career have been with people that I have already built a relationship with in one way or another. People who were parents on my son's baseball team, people who were parents who were a part of a booster organization for the music organization that my kids were involved in, where one knew me, then they usually ask what they would do. I think we're still good.
Yeah, he does this to me on our podcast and our Facebook Live all the time. And then I have to fill for like 3 minutes while Tom's off. I think he just goes, gets a cup of coffee, eats a donut, reads the paper, and comes back. So,
well, if I see him suddenly do this, and he's not really frozen, we'll know.
Wow, I didn't even notice that people weren't moving. You want me to go back to my answer on networking?
Just a little.
Okay. That where I've found the best network is with people I already have a relationship with, who maybe don't know exactly how I help people. And then when they ask me what I do, I tell them about the people that I help and how I help them from where they are to where they want to be. And what I've found is because there is already a little bit of know, like, and trust, it's easier. And they feel like, wow, well, now I understand not only who you are as a person, but I understand what you do as a profession and how you help people.
Do you find that people in networking events do the same thing that you do? Do you often, you never really hear somebody say, so what's your biggest challenge? No.
What I find interesting is I sometimes play the game of how long can this person talk about who they are and what they do before they ask anything about me, which is why I always like to ask the first question. I like to be the one that says, so tell me a little bit about what's going on with you or what your biggest challenges are. Because I think that I'm always intrigued. And what I look for is who is that person that I feel like we have a connection? Whether or not they're ever going to use the value that I can provide, but they're someone who I want to have a further conversation with. I want to learn more about who they are and what they do because I think they're a good person. And I feel like if I can connect with good people, we're going to build that know, like, and trust, and they're going to be more likely to refer me to people who they know and like, because they're not going to be worried about how am I going to treat the people that they refer me to.
If I can, Paul, I think there's a fallacy about networking events. I think a lot of people, especially new entrepreneurs, think that they're going to go to the networking event, sign a contract, and walk away with the customer. Now, I've never seen anyone actually bring a contract to a networking event, but I'm going to bet there's some people with them out in their cars. And I think that fallacy is really pervasive. And I think the other big fallacy that you see in networking events is it's about me telling you all about me. Mm-hmm. That's my goal, is if I can talk about myself for 28 of the 30 minutes, I've had a great night. I've had a great event. And I think what I've found and what Tom has found and what we teach the people we're coaching and working with is it's about asking more questions, because then you find the language out of your customer. And I'm sure, Glenn, you're going, yeah, this is what I say all the time. You find the language, you find what their issues really are in their words, which I got to tell you, the people's issues that we found in discovery over the last 18 months, we kind of thought we knew what the issues were, but we didn't have the language. And we've really gotten much deeper in understanding by asking everyone. If I run into a person, I'm asking more questions. I've had people like, wait, we had coffee for a half hour. You didn't tell me anything about you. I'm like, yep, I'm good. And then when you have that follow-up call, they're like, so Bob, you didn't really tell me what you do. So I looked at your LinkedIn profile. I went to your website. I think you might be able to help me. It's a whole lot more powerful when they discover it themselves than when we tell you. If I tell you, Paul, I can help you. You know, your background there, you should change it, blah, blah, blah. You're like, okay, whatever. If we have an honest discussion, I go, you know, Paul, I've learned some things about backgrounds, and your background's lovely. So I'm just using it hypothetically. But if we can have that dialogue, and that's how Tom and I got to know each other, through networking events and not having those hard discussions about what do you do? I think we probably spent the better part of a year not really knowing what each of us did. And I love how Tom can pause with a perfect smile. That's a gift right there.
Yeah. No, I think his camera's frozen again.
Well,
Yeah.
and since it's just us and it's frozen and we're not recording this, for those people out there that are doing sales, guess what? If you're in a sales meeting and you do that same thing, I call it using the law of reciprocity, and just give them something for free. You know how much harder it is not to listen to you at the end when you've already given them something that that means nothing to you and you're not getting anything from?
Yeah. And then there's also the mindset that if this person is willing to give me all of this, can you imagine if I really engage with them, what they will be able to give me? I'm going to add a little caveat to what you just said, Bob and Tom, about networking. What if you were to add, after that, I absolutely agree with the whole process. What if right at the end you were able to describe what it is that you do in 15 seconds? Just so that you're memorable, just so that they know when they tell other people about you, they're able to describe you in 15 seconds, or really in one sentence, or even just in one noun with an adjective. You know, what is this person? I think that's something that is important as well. In fact, whenever I have a one-on-one meeting with someone, I always wrap it up by saying, all right, when I recommend what it is that you're doing, and I'll only say that, of course, if I'm impressed enough or I think that there's a connection. When I say, well, you should be working with so-and-so, they do this. And I let them usually describe, and it usually takes them about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. And I'm usually writing down notes. And then I go, oh, so when I tell people about you, you're just boom, 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 boom. And then they go, yeah, that's it. I go, okay, that's good. So then I'm giving them basically a bumper sticker so that I'm able to talk about them, which I think is important, that you have a real clear idea of who it is you're recommending, because that clarity will go a long way.
I would say, Paul, if I can push back a little bit, I like the idea, but one of the things I've found is if it's an ideal person for me, and I've asked the right questions, and they haven't felt like, you know, they're being deluged with these really personal questions. You know, you can't say, hey, I'm a podiatrist. Do you have a really bad rash on your foot? Let me look at that. That doesn't work real well. I'm blessed. Tom's blessed. You guys are blessed. We do coaching and that kind of work. So you can get people to move into that genre. The most powerful sentence I use all the time, if they're a good fit, is they go, and what do you do? And I go, help people just like you. And it's a mic drop moment. I mean, it really, it's incredibly powerful, because I can say that with confidence because I understand their issue. I've asked them the questions. I've delivered value and this is something I think, Glenn, that you might recognize, you deliver value in asking really good questions. Sometimes the person's answering of your really good question gives them a new insight that they did not have before. I mean, we've already had this as we're going through this tonight.
Mhm.
Tom and I talk about what we do all the time, but doing it in this format with you guys is really, I'm hearing it differently. I'm experiencing it differently. And I think that's something that we often have when someone asks us a really good question, like, what's your biggest challenge? What would success look like for you in a year? And I get people going, whoa, I just want to tell you what I do. Whatever. And then I play Tom's game.
Yeah.
How long are they going to talk about themselves? But how can you possibly tell another person about you if you don't know their perspective? If you are a realtor and I've made a commitment that I'm never going to buy a house. My grandmother gave me a house. I don't ever need a house. And you're telling me all the great things about buying and selling houses. You're wasting your time. And if you're having that discussion up front, you might, you could shift to it. I'm sure you know people who are buying and selling houses, right? But you've got to have the questioning. And I think what Tom and I really try to help people to do is ask more questions and listen to both what they say and what they don't say. People say a lot with what they don't say.
And how they say it.
No doubt.
Yep.
Right.
Well, now, what about difficult or situations? I'm interested, I'm intrigued now. What about situations where someone just right up front says, so what do you do? And you haven't had a chance to ask those questions yet. And you don't want to seem evasive. What's usually the best response? Because we will all, this is something that I do on a daily basis, which is people bring up scenarios and they say, what do I say at that point? So I'm intrigued to hear from both of you guys. What do you say? Let me start first with you, Tom. What would you say, knowing that you want to go, knowing that you want to go through this process, which I absolutely agree with. But what happens when somebody just jumps the shark and just says, so Tom, what do you do?
So what I try to do is I try to tell them who I serve, how I serve them, and what results they're going to get. So the key thing for me is I want people, if you ask me that question, I want you to know who I work with. So I would say small business owners, entrepreneurs, and organizational leaders. And then I would tell what their challenges are, who are overwhelmed, who can't figure out why it's so hard, who go to work every day and feel like they get nothing accomplished because they have too much to do and not enough time to do it.
Right.
And then I tell them through my coaching and consulting, I help them reach ABC results. And what I find that does is that it allows them to have words that I know people they know say all the time. So that when they are talking to their friend Joe, and Joe is like, oh my God, I just had another day. It was so hard to be a leader of this team. I have too much to do, and I just don't know what to do first. You can be like, wait a minute, I heard that. You need to talk to Tom Brush because he might be able to help you figure out how to find more clarity, some direction, and just what's your next step to move forward. And so that to me is, I never want to tell them what I do. I want to talk to them about who I serve, what their challenges are, and what the results that I have been able to help others achieve. And I think that for me, that means I'm not, because they don't really care what I do, right? They want to, they're asking because they're being polite and they're nice. And there are people who actually do care because they want to add to their network, people who they might be able to tell others about. And in reality, they are also people who are thinking about, all right, well, how do I share what I do to me? And so I think that's the direction I try to take when people ask me that question first.
And I think one of the things that Tom talks about in there that really struck me as he was saying it, and I say something very similar, the word overwhelmed, the word stuck, trying to figure out their next steps, those are inviting phrases. I get all the time, what do you mean overwhelmed? I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you're sitting there, you don't know what to do at 9 o'clock on Monday, and now it's 3 o'clock on Monday, and You went through all of Facebook, your emails cleared out, your desk looks beautiful, but you didn't do the things you needed to do. Oh yeah, that's me. And really getting at that language. And I think that's what you get from asking the questions and really listening to what people tell you. You know, it's so funny when we're talking to people about working with them and they use the words. Bob, someone said to me 2 weeks ago, they're like, I really feel overwhelmed. Sometimes I'm just stuck and I'm like, are they just being funny? And I had to be like, maybe it's me, maybe. And then they're like, no, I know you understand because I saw a post where you talked about being stuck. And so now you're talking their language, and now you're helping them to understand what you do from their eyes, not yours. And I think that's what ultimately the shift is. We all care about ourselves first and foremost. So when someone cares about us more than they care about themselves, I think that makes you a renegade, for one. It also makes you a real anomaly.
Yeah. I would also offer that, you know, the words that I've chosen, I didn't just come up with them. I actually went out and talked to business leaders about what are the challenges they face. I also do some work with nonprofit leaders.
You came up with those words all by yourself, Tom?
No. I asked, you know, and I think so often we're afraid to ask to find out. We did a whole session with our network people about creating their 30-second elevator pitch. And that really, you can't really start creating it until you start asking people who are your ideal clients, what are the challenges that they're facing, so that they can say to you, and they say it the way they are thinking it, not the way that Tom's sitting at his desk. Well, I think they would say this. And you use all these really great words that look good on paper, but no one is actually thinking those things to themselves.
Right.
And I think that is the key piece, is the more you understand the language of your clients, the more you can speak to them, and that they will actually listen and be like, holy cow, that's exactly what I need. Funny, if you don't mind, I'll share a quick story. So the first time Bob and I met was at a networking event that he was running. And he went around the room and everybody told what they did. You know, they gave their little elevator pitch. And Bob's piece that he said was, this is when he had a different company, was, I help people, businesses, get a bigger piece of the pie. You know, bigger piece of all of the opportunities that are out there. I said, that's really cool. And I remembered it later in that day. And I had literally met Bob for the first time at that meeting. Later in that day, I was at another event where someone, small business owner, service industry, said, I just wish that I could get a bigger piece of the pie. And I was like, I know exactly who you need to talk to. And it was such a weird and yet reaffirming conversation to say, I listened to what Bob had to say. He used language that people use, and somebody said it, and I was like, the first thing I thought of was, well, you need to talk to this guy, Bob Grant. He helps people get a bigger piece of the pie. And it was a fascinating weird that it was the first time we had ever met, and that it just so happened to work out that way.
Now, Glenn, isn't that like doing your avatar work is really, I mean, that would be a fancy consultative term for it. You know, have you determined your avatars? And really what you do is you determine that by just listening, but you really need to know the language. Not only do you need to know what their income is, you know, usually it's how much do they make, where do they work, what's their title? How about, you know, and we love this, what are the words that they use to describe everyday circumstances of their life? Right,
my
Glenn?
favorite question, I'm sorry, my favorite question is, what are the things that keep you up at night? When you're lying in bed awake at 11:30, 12, 1 o'clock, what is it that keeps you awake at night? And people come up with that. They know those answers right away.
I look at Bob and I would say he's probably a professional high hurdler coach, because most often that hardest hurdle to get over is that 6 inches between your ears.
No doubt.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. I like that.
I have to add that to your repertoire, Bob.
I will. I think that's great. Thank you.
You bet.
So are there you work with, is there a difference? Let me ask you this. Is there, from your experience, much of a difference between small business owners and entrepreneurs? The mindset, the slight mindset shift. Is there Is there a difference? Do you find that obviously there's a difference in language, but just in terms of productivity or getting unstuck, as you had said, Bob?
I'll take a stab at that. I think there are some subtle differences. I find it easier to work with a newer entrepreneur on these types of things because we don't have to tear down all the things that they've done. You know, I'm working with someone that we have in our Renegade Success Network right now, and she came from a corporate background. And in that corporate background in her field, they were in the numbers game of sales calls. Call 100 people, you'll get 1 or 2 customers. She wanted to go out on her own and not do that. And it's taken a while to unpack that. And it's funny because she's like, I'm always afraid I'm going to go into corporate me, which is the shotgun. I don't care about you. Let me ask, you know, do you need insurance? Done. Versus let's have a discussion around it. Or, you know, do you have a lawn? Oh, no, never mind. You're off. If you have a lawn, well, we cut grass. Well, and so I think that's what happens with someone who's more established. But a lot of the people we find working with have come from a corporate background, and now they've either been forced into entrepreneurship or they've decided it's the right fit for them. But that doesn't mean they know what it is. And I will tell you, I came into it, I thought my eyes were open. They were not. My first business, I made some really silly mistakes, like not spending money on marketing, like not really knowing what the heck I was doing and charging way less than I should have, way less. When I started my second business, it was a different animal. And I think what we've tried to do is help people cut that curve, because, you know, everyone's got a certain amount of runway before they have to be successful enough to pay their bills, to feel like they're moving forward. And there aren't a lot of resources out there. There are plenty of books and there are plenty of videos and there's a lot of stuff that you can consume, but it isn't real customized. And what Tom and I do, one of the things for the people in our Renegade Success Network, when they get to a certain level, a package, we give them unlimited 15-minute laser solution sessions. These are 15-minute meetings where they come with a very specific problem and we help them address it. It's usually something as simple as, I don't know if this is a really good mission statement for my website, or I'm trying to do my business cards. Can you take a look at my logo? It's all the stuff that most of us fumbled through.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to help them. Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that I think that you did a really nice job of explaining some of the similarities. And I think there are even more. I think that when I go down to the basic level, it's one, they're usually on their own and they have nobody else to talk to. And a lot of people don't believe in the dream that they have. It's their dream. And others are like, why would you want to go do that? Just go take a job, get a steady paycheck, and life will be great. I think the other thing is they don't have anybody to talk to. I saw that late, Glenn. So thanks for sharing that. They also don't have people to talk to. It was one of the things I found when I was working in higher ed, that I was fortunate. I found people who knew enough about my role, who I knew, like, and trusted, that when I had a question that I didn't want to run up the pole because I was supposed to be the expert, or I didn't want to talk to my team about it because they're like, well, why are you asking us what the solution is? That I could have a conversation with someone and they would just ask me questions so that I could figure out if this was what was going to be real for me. And I could then decide how I wanted to move forward with it. And so I think small business owners and entrepreneurs have some of that same challenges. They also have limited resources typically. They usually are not funded with here's $1 million from the bank, go start your business. They're bootstrapping it and trying to figure it out. And I think that when that is the case, they sometimes make decisions that aren't going to be the most effective. And they're worried about investing in themselves and their business. And so I think there are some similarities between the two when you get down to the basics of what they're ultimately trying to accomplish, which is build a successful business that they can run the way they want to run it, not have somebody telling them what they have to do, what they need to do, when they need to show up at work, and really build the lifestyle that they want to have.
There's actually a third group that we've found that is very similar, believe it or not, and that's organizational leaders. Tom comes from a nonprofit background, and as he and I started talking about doing something together, we saw that we were doing very similar things, just to different audiences, but they were the same things. Because if you're a leader in an organization and you're trying to shift the culture, change the staffing, increase revenue, whatever it is, it's the same. You're basically running a small business. And so we found that those three groups, small business owners, entrepreneurs, and organizational leaders, have very many of the same challenges. And we're coaching them with, I don't change the language among those three groups at all. It's really the same problems. They're stuck, they're overwhelmed. Now, if you're an organizational leader, it's more of a staffing kind of thing where you got to deal with managing people, more so than a bootstrapping entrepreneur who's doing it herself. But they're still going through a lot of the same things: time management, prioritizing, recognizing their successes along the way, rather than, I didn't make $4 million this year, I'm a failure. Okay, you made 3.8. Cut yourself a $200,000 break, please. I'm sorry, Glenn, was I not supposed to share your revenue numbers?
Well, as long as you don't embellish, we're okay. So here's what I've seen from business owners over the years. And so I'd like to see your perspectives on how you deal with these. I see people that get started in business and they work in their business, they realize to work on their business. Like you were talking about, they're not doing the marketing, they're not doing the advertising, they're not planning for 3, 6, 12, 18, 24 months. And they were in one facet of their previous company. And it doesn't matter if you're a veterinarian, if you're a dermatologist, if you're a roofer, if you're a plumber, you're one area that you were laser focused on. You have to kind of go like this. And a lot of times it starts weighing them down because there's all these other things. I have to have an accountant to do this stuff. I have to have a website that I know that's actually going to work with 25 people trying to sell it to me. I have to understand marketing and social media and what's this Twitter, Twatter, whatever it is. What do you mean I have to do all this stuff? So it's like, I know how to do one thing very well, but then can you turn that one thing you know very well into a business that you can grow and at some point can sustain without you in there? Because without it being sustainable, you don't have an exit plan. So how's that for a 50 million foot question? How do we help businesses that are in there and also they're overwhelmed because they're like, how in the heck do I have to do all this stuff? I don't have a board. I don't have different departments. It's chief cook, bottle wash. Let's go.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay.
Or you want me to take it? I'm happy to talk it if you want.
No, go ahead, Tom, please.
All right.
I had something to say, but I feel like I've said too much, so I'll let you go.
No, that's okay. Well, I think one of the things is, I think one of the hardest decisions that entrepreneurs, small business owners have to make is investing in their business. And I clearly remember, it's funny because I texted Bob when I first decided to make a significant investment in a coach, where I knew that I didn't have all the resources that I needed to have. I knew I had a certain skill set and the things that I could do really well. And there were other things that I didn't like to do, I didn't have a skill set for, and I tried to piecemeal it together, which means it took me a whole lot longer to do. It was spending time on something that wasn't helping me generate business and really was taking me away from what I wanted to accomplish. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I had one of my clients I was talking with who found themselves, they were an organizational leader, worried about like signs that had fallen down and who's taking out the garbage. And when what they really needed to be doing was focusing on their board, getting out into the community to find other revenue sources, and just being more engaged with their high level, it was a nonprofit, so high level donors. And so we talked really about like, all right, what's the return on investment of you worrying about the garbage? Does it have to get done? Yes. Somebody else needs to figure out how to do that. And I think, that becomes one of the challenges. And that when you decide to invest in yourself and your organization, I think is when you really start to see the difference being made. You start finding experts to do the things that they are experts at that you are not good at. so that you can focus on the things that you're really good at. It's going to help you move your organization forward.
Now, do you find that delegation is probably one of the biggest investments that you have to make in your business? I mean, I understand that there's an expense. There's also an emotional expense as well, but there's actually a monetary expense to delegating and letting go of all of those things. Would you say that's one of the initial big investments that you make?
I think that's
Well,
one. Oh, go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I want to step back a little bit because Glenn, you described it really well. You're doing all these things. And I think for a lot of people, doing all those things equals filling a 40-hour work week. And they avoid the hard stuff, the going out to the networking, the making the sales request, the dealing with the customers, all those things that aren't in the sweet spot. It's really easy to go to Office Depot and buy staples. I know, I literally did it one time and I wrote an article for Entrepreneur Magazine on it. That was my day. What did you do today? I bought staples. And I was so excited that I bought office supplies for myself. Now, meanwhile, I wasn't getting any business that day. I didn't interact with any of my potential customers. And I think that's one of the things that I see people doing, and I saw it in myself, is we do the busy things, the easy stuff, to avoid the things that are going to stretch us. When we become uncomfortable, that's when we get scared, and that's when we're like, you know what? I'm just going to take the trash out. I know I took it out last hour. Or I need to check my email again because someone could have sent me an email, even though you haven't sent anyone an email all day. And so I think a lot of this is about the mindset and about helping people focus on what they need to be really doing. And that's something Tom and I have worked on, and we've got a program we put together. The goal of the program is to help people really zero in on what they want to do each day to drive their business, the next step. But also, we start that, believe it or not, in this 15-minute planning session for the day. The first thing you do, if you follow it, is you celebrate something you've accomplished, big or small, and not the results. So if you made a sales call and it went horribly wrong, you vomited all over yourself, you said all the wrong stuff, I would celebrate the fact that you did the sales call, even though the result wasn't there. And when we start helping people celebrate, they start to become more focused on, hey, you know what? This isn't as hard as it looks. And the next step's a lot easier than the big step. You know, go ahead, Glenn.
Nope, sorry about that. I just realized my computer was about to die because it wasn't plugged in. I apologize.
Oh, okay. I thought you were telling me to be quiet.
No,
I actually,
Paul was freaking out.
I know. We actually, I thought we had a David Lynch moment there. It was like cinema verite. It was just all of a sudden there was a close up of Glenn's head.
Sorry about that. I realized my computer started blinking saying battery's dead.
Okay, well, now here's a moment of transparency, and Glenn is going to laugh at this, I'm sure, or he's going to cry. It'll be one or the other, and that is my going to buy staples moment, as you described, Bob. Is my thought process is I'm just going to go tweak the website.
That's a good one.
That's kind of in between laughing and crying there for Glenn, because he assists me with that.
I'm gonna go get a drink face. See you guys.
Yeah.
And we all do it. We all do it. It's not, we're joking about it, but it's a really serious aspect of the shift that you have to make to find success. Yeah. Even if you're the most successful leader in the world, you still have moments where you're uncomfortable. You still want to not do your work that day and watch, binge some TV show on Netflix. That doesn't go away. It's how you get comfortable with, how am I going to deal with it? I'm going to prohibit myself from going to Office Depot until I've made the calls. I'm not going to play with my website until I get my work done for the day. Now, maybe there's a day where your website's really critical, but what we try to help people figure out is, what are the important things you have to do? And if you do the important things, you might actually be able to get through your day in less time. Because sometimes if you spend 7 hours doing all the not necessary stuff, and you still have to do the two other things like invoice customers, you're going to be at work till late in the evening for no reason other than you aren't successfully managing your time and you're not prioritizing well. And Tom and I have both seen this a lot. We've spent a lot of time really trying to figure out ways to make that easier for people. It's something that we found. We started playing around with it for ourselves. We started playing around with it for some people, and now we put together a little program people can take advantage of, a 30-day program where we help them start to really focus that day so that it's action first. Well, it's celebration, action, next step. You do that 5 days a week, I'm going to tell you right now, we're seeing that it really accelerates people's progress. And they feel really good about it. Like they get on here and be like, oh, yesterday was the best day in the world. Really? Why? Oh, I had the 3 things I was going to do today. I knew what they were. I knew why I was doing them, and I did them. Oh, and I got done at 12:30, so I had the afternoon to play with my kids who were off of school.
Right.
Awesome. Yeah. And it's possible. And if you're going to build this business of your own the way you want it to be, if you're going to be a leader doing it your own way, you might as well carve it out in a way that you're not working 100 hours a week, because hours don't equal success. And that's another fallacy I think people start at. You know, if I don't work 40 hours a week, I haven't done a job. If you can do it in 10, go to Las Vegas and play poker all night.
That's right.
Well, and one thing that I'd like to see your guys' kind of perception on this is the one thing that kind of really struck me in the second quarter of last year, when it was really had some time on my hands. I don't remember why. There was some reason I wasn't doing as much outside. But anyway, realizing all these things that I do during the day, during the week, what do I enjoy and what do I not do because I'm going to go to Staples because I don't want to do them. And if it's things that I don't want to do, I'm probably doing it and forcing myself to be a B at it. If I can find someone else to do it, now I have a lot more time to do the stuff that I do very well. And if I can focus my time on what I'm doing very well, how much more successful will my company be?
Absolutely. I think that's an important question that all leaders or business owners or entrepreneurs need to ask, is like, what are the things that I'm really good at? And what are the things that I absolutely have to do because those are the things that are going to move my business forward? And then everything else either comes second, or I have to go out and find somebody else who can do that and do it more effectively, more efficiently, so that I can do what I need to do.
Or even if it's as efficiently, now I'm not spending my time on it. So now I can spend my other time somewhere else. So if it's not getting done any worse than me doing it, it's off my plate.
Right.
Yep.
Now, I want to bring up something that you had said, Tom, right in the beginning of today's broadcast, and it stuck with me. Obviously, having gone through as much as we've gone through, it's still rattling around in my head. And that is having a group or having a network to celebrate your successes. And I know you both began to explain that a little bit more, in that we don't often understand the celebration of successes that has to happen on a daily basis. We simply see it as reaching the summit of the mountain. But having a group that appreciates that you are having those successes and being able to celebrate it with you on the level that it needs to be celebrated. Could you detail that just a little bit? Maybe if either of you guys can think of a scenario where that played out to great success.
Well, if I may, one of the folks that I've been doing some coaching with in our Renegade Success Network, he and I get on calls every 2 weeks. And 1 week we got on a call, and typically the first thing, hey, what are we celebrating? And Tom and I both do that with people. And this week I was distracted. I don't remember why, but I didn't start there. And at the end of this call, he said, hey, what about my celebration, dude? And it was a real clarifying moment for me. He wanted to celebrate it, and he knew that I would understand that the effort that went into it. And I think that's what our Renegade Success Network, that's what our Facebook group really allows, is people who understand that just getting on the phone and making a call is a huge step. Just getting your website, handing off your website to a professional or approving your website is a huge step. And I think that's what I never saw in my first business. That's what Tom and I brought to each other. We celebrated each other's successes. When he texted me, within 2 hours of you committing to a huge amount of money to drive your business forward, he texted me. And the text was, "You're not going to believe this." And my first thought was, crap, I got to keep up with him. And the second thought was, he's playing real. He's really committed. And we celebrated that. And we celebrate really little things. I mean, Tom's great with me. He coaches me all the time. But he'll always say to me, "Hey, what are you celebrating today?" Or I'll say, "Hey, this thing happened." He's like, "Hey, you're going to celebrate that, right?" And that makes a huge difference, because if we can get to the place where we're celebrating something and where other people recognize it, then all those naysayers, they disappear. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have a naysayer in my life. I've had to find a network outside of that person to be successful. Otherwise, that voice is way too loud.
I bet I know who appreciates your relationship with Tom the most. Your wife, because she doesn't have to hear it anymore. Because my wife, I'll come in there and she's like, "What are we talking about with websites now, Glenn?"
Well, and I think that's one of the things we hear from our clients a lot and our members is, "Hey, it's really great that I can talk to you about this." We have someone who used to talk to her husband, and we were on a call with her one night, a networking thing, and we were sort of talking about some business stuff. And he was like, "This is great. I love that you're doing this." Mm-hmm. And Tom, I think it's fair. Can I talk about someone I coach that you know really well? Tom? Uh-oh. He left us again.
He's doing that mannequin thing again.
He's so good at that.
Yeah.
But he's not smiling as much this time. But I coach someone that Tom is very close to. I hope you don't mind this, Tom.
It's good.
I think it's okay. And I think having me be able to coach this person makes Tom's life a lot easier, because there are times that I can say things that Tom might say, but his role is to be a spouse or a brother or a cousin or whatever it is to that person. My role is to be the coach, and the coach can do something different. And I think that's a real powerful role for a business leader, that you don't get it until you actually do it. And then you suddenly go, "Oh, this is so great." Being open with someone who doesn't go, "Really? You're going to be successful with that mindset? You're going to be able to do, really? You lost a big contract?" Whereas if you came to Tom and me and be like, "Okay, you lost a big contract. All right. Do you understand what happened? Is there anything you can learn from it? Great. What are you going to do next?" It's solution-based, not this is cataclysmic, the world's coming to an end. And it's natural. I'm not saying that's wrong for a person. For a spouse, for someone who cares about us, this is a hard path to watch. Entrepreneurs get that. And so being able to talk to people that get it, that's the legacy that I think Tom and I brought with this, that we brought it for ourselves. When this started April a year ago, it was for Tom and me. Literally, Tom, how are we going to deal with the world being shut down? Because I don't think I'm going to do real well. Hey, let's do a Facebook Live every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Which led to the whole thing. Couldn't have planned.
Mm-hmm.
I just add something about celebrations as well, that, you talked about the community and celebrations, and Bob has talked about it, but I don't think he's really hit on it, is that one of the things we try to talk to people about is celebrating the action, not the results, because the action are things that we can control. And that's, for me, that's the key piece, is like, okay, I took an action. Usually it's hard. And sometimes the results aren't what we want. And it's very easy for us to beat ourselves up about results that we unexpected, or that didn't go the way we thought. And that can turn us into a tailspin, or they went way better than we thought, and we can live in the land of believing that we figured it all out for way too long. And so on those two,
well put.
you can struggle with that, and you can stay there and miss what you've learned. And so one of the things we always try to do with people is after every action, we ask them to consider 3 questions. What went well? What didn't go as planned? And what would I do differently? So that really they're trying to learn from that action and then move forward to figure out what is it I'm going to do next. Those are the things that we can control. And the willingness to celebrate things like that, when a lot of other people would never celebrate, as Bob said, the phone call that goes horribly, horribly wrong. I try not to define those. I try to just say, okay, I had a call. Now, what did I learn from it? How can I take that to figure out how to do better the next time? And I think that's why we so often want to celebrate, because we know in this lifestyle that you can beat yourself up pretty easily. And you can live in that world for a long time unless you have others who are willing to say, pick yourself back up, figure out what you learned, and take your next step.
Well, I'll tell you, you guys are doing incredibly supportive work with the Renegade Success Network. And I'm sure that everyone who is watching this show is going to want to figure out how to get in touch with you. What is the best way to do that?
Easiest thing is go to renegadesuccessnetwork.com. The other thing you can do is look for Tom Brush. He is all over Twitter, LinkedIn. He posts on LinkedIn a couple times a week. I think you know that, Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, when we talk about this whole relationship thing, I think we have to really point out you two know each other from interactions, and that's what led to this. That all the things we talked about tonight really struck me about halfway through. It's like, this wouldn't have happened if you two had not been aligned over things and gotten to know each other. And it's really obvious, Paul, in the discussion tonight, that you know Tom pretty well, and Tom knows you pretty well.
Yeah, we do. We keep an eye on what each other is posting because he enlightens me on a weekly, if not a daily basis. So yes. Yeah.
I know the feeling. He does it for me as well.
Yeah, I know.
We all
Sorry, Glenn, I didn't mean to leave you out. You gave me a very kind compliment earlier. I appreciate it. I will carry it. My head will get through the door somehow, but I'm going to have to really shape it to get through now.
Created a monster. One of the things that I think about that is, you know, one of the things I firmly believe is that what is real for each of us is unique. We all have our own knowledge, experience, and perspective that no one else in the world has. And so every time we interact with someone, we have the opportunity to have what's real for us be influenced. Sometimes it might be small, other times it might be unbelievably significant. And I think if we always think about that every interaction gives us the chance to have what's real for us impacted, it changes a lot about the way we look at every interaction that we have.
Awesome.
I think we're going to end on that.
Okay.
That's a
The
good
mic drop.
Yeah, that's a mic drop right there. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this Blabbit broadcast. And certainly you do a daily Facebook Live that people should tap into as well through it. And does that project on Ring of Renegades? Is that where you broadcast?
Yes. Ring of Renegades Facebook group.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right,
It is
Glenn.
a private group.
So
We're going to ask you if why you might think you're a renegade, and then you can join.
That's right. It's a really hard question.
Well, you know, I think we've all gained insights to understand what it means to be a renegade now. So just even that is an incredible public service.